Welcome to the Parenting with Confidence podcast. I am your host, Theresa Alexander Inman, board certified behavior analyst and infant toddler developmental specialist. So today I'm so excited. And honestly, I've never had two guests on before. So this is kind of new for me and fun. So Brian Perry and Luke Grimm of These 16 Things have joined us today, and I'm going to let them take this away and tell you about themselves and about these 16 things, and then we'll move on from there. So welcome, gentlemen.
Welcome, and
Hello.
thank you for having us. Yeah.
My pleasure.
So I'll go ahead and start off, I guess, with I'm the one who actually started the website, but early on I brought Luke on to help me out. So the reason and the background behind it was I just heard something that somebody else had put out about things to teach kids before they get out of school, or things to teach kids that schools won't really. And I remember I was in the van with my wife and I said, we have to do something around this because we all already homeschool our kids. We have 7 kids and we homeschool. And on top of that, I like to teach them kind of life lessons and things that are going to prepare them. So I kind of took that other idea and ran with it, changed a few things to our own things, and came up with 16 things to teach kids that schools won't, which is where I really wanted a simple, easy website. So when I told people what the website would be, we wouldn't have to explain it for a few minutes to get them to figure out what the website address was. So wanted something really simple. It's these16things.com, which the only explanation needs is a 16. So these16things.com. And it's just all about how to, or what to really, we help parents teach kids things that schools aren't going to teach them, whether that's hard skills like cooking and or self-defense to how to think on your own, how to tell what truth is. So, and like I said, I very early on, I brought Luke on because I value his input on this because I know we've been friends here for a few years and I know that he does the same things with his kids. So I wanted to bring him on pretty early here and I'll let him take it from there.
Awesome. Thank you, Brian.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. So cool, Theresa. Thanks for having us. Yeah, Brian and I are really good friends here in Central Indiana. So my wife and I, we live on the south side of Indianapolis. We have 7 daughters and a new son. So Brian didn't tell you that he has a new son as well, newer than mine, like right out of the package.
Wow.
Well, Brian, yeah, we can't gloss over that. Brian, how old is your son?
3 weeks.
Wow.
3 weeks old.
Brand new baby.
Yep.
Yeah, we can't just gloss that. Yeah, so something Brian mentioned about someone's going to teach the kids, if not us, then who? And so that's been a big focal point for us is trying to get parents to feel confident, much like your podcast name, inspiring some confidence that you can do these things. Because we both believe parents want to. Parents want their kids to be successful. We may disagree on what success means, but we want them to be successful.
Right, absolutely.
And if you ask parents, I've never heard of, yeah, and if you ask a parent, who is best fit to teach your kid, and you give them some options. Option 1 is you, mom and dad. Or option 1 is the family, and option 2 is education system, which I'm a teacher, so don't misunderstand that. But the education system or culture or TV, everybody goes with option 1.
Yes.
Yeah. So we're just trying to provide some tools to help out the parents, and Brian put this together, and I'm privileged to be part of it.
Wonderful. Wow. So welcome. So welcome, guys. And just to expand on what you said, Luke, option 1, the first teacher that the child has is option 1, right? Starts at home, and it starts with the parents modeling for the children how to, whatever it is. So they learn they're learning from birth. Actually, they're learning from the womb what about life and things. And so, yeah, option 1 is the best option. Like I told you before we started recording, when I work with parents, I always tell them, you are the expert regarding your child. I may no child development and behavior. However, we've got to work together to do this.
Yeah. So even if Brian and I were talking about earlier about parents coming home exhausted. A parent comes home exhausted. They've been at work. They're just thinking about food, and they're thinking about, what am I going to watch on TV? How do I unwind? What am I going to eat? When am I going to go to bed? And the word "I" comes out of that again and again and again. And sometimes we neglect the time we have with our kids, and sometimes that's only in the evenings. And so a lot of things that Brian's put together involves, imagine you take your middle schooler or your teen or whatever, take them by the hand or by the wrist, pull them to the table and say, sit down. Let's have a real, genuine conversation. So we pictured the dining room table being at the core of every one of these lessons. Brian, I don't know if you want to add into that. You were talking earlier today with me about parents being exhausted.
Yeah, so just coming home and not having the energy yourself to teach the kids what they need to learn, really, and you're kind of hoping that the other teacher, or their school teacher does it, or their pastor does it, or whoever else they come in contact. And you may say it takes a village to raise the kids, so you want other family members to jump in as well, which is all good, and all those people are teaching your kids. But when it comes down to the final say, it has to be the parent. It has to be the parent, not only teaching them by example, but teaching them the things about really the reasons why we teach them what we teach them. So I can, for example, if we get into finances, I can teach my kids to save some money. But when they first get out on their own and have their own job, and I'm not watching over them and tell them exactly where to put their money, then, especially if they're out of the house, maybe they're in college, their roommate in college asks them, why do you save money? I don't know. My dad just told me to save money. But there's this video game you can get. You're going to have to spend all your money, maybe even a little extra. Why don't you get that? That's a lot more fun than saving some money. And if they don't know the reason why they're saving money, then that's going to crumble. And it's the same with every concept that we talk about, can be the exact same situation. So we want to teach them why we're going to save money, why we deal with people this way, why we're nice to people, why we show grace and forgiveness to somebody, and not just tell them to do it, but tell them why we're doing it.
So important. And it just reminded me of a story that I have heard several times, different iterations of it. But there was this family, and mom, every time she cooked, it was a certain cut of meat, she would cut the ends off and throw it away. And then her daughter did the same thing. And of course, when the grandchild, so there was the grandma, the mom, and then the grandchild, she asked, well, mom, why do you always cut the meat off and throw it out? She goes, I don't know. My mom always did it. And then mom was like, oh, well, my mom always did it. So then they went back to, grandma or great grandma and asked, why did you always do that? She said, the pan was too small.
Yeah.
So so there was nobody asked before. So that's so to speak to what you said, Brian, the why is so important. And so often we're not privy to the why. Children are not privy to the why because they should be seen and not heard, right? They don't need to know why. Just do as I say. And and what we've learned and what we found out in science and how things really work, people do what they see more than they do what than they're told to do. So
and a lot of our beliefs, Brian and I are going through a study. It's not a Bible study per se, but it's a book study. And the book is titled, I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist. And before we get going into the nitty gritty, we have to establish something simple. Is there truth in life? Is there truth at all? Oh, your truth. What for you is good. There is truth. But then after that, it talks about, where do we get these beliefs from? And family is a core tenet for a lot of people. So we're in the room asking around, where do you get most of your things from? And it comes from family. But then if you ask a follow-on question, it's like, well, how? How did you get it from family? And almost all the time it's, well, I saw my parents doing, or we just did it. But it's rarely, my mom sat me down one time and she had a real conversation about why giving my money and giving my time and giving my energy and serving is important. That's a rare conversation to have. So we're really trying to establish the why. I like your story about the pan. Is that a true story?
It is, yeah. Several people have said it in different places. So yeah, I think it
Yeah.
is. I don't
I
know.
like the pan was too small. But
Yeah,
doesn't that speak to so many things that we do?
yeah, yeah, it certainly does. And we're always, and another thing, I remember listening to Joyce Meyer one time, and she's like, they said, because they're always saying whatever, like, who is they? Right? We always, we're following rules that somebody else developed that are not applicable to our lives, and they don't line up with our beliefs or our truth, the truth. Is just because the masses are doing it.
Mm.
Yeah, it's funny. I interviewed ex St. Anderson last week, and he said when he went to school, before he went to school, he drew trees, with the leaves had veins, and he like in such detail. And then he went to school, and children were drawing trees with just like a little trunk and a poof on the top. And he went home drawing trees like that. And he said his mom cried because he's not drawing his trees. He's now, doing what the other children are doing.
Following other people. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And that was a tough
Conforming
lesson
to,
for him. Yes.
yeah.
So,
Brian was sharing. Brian, I don't know if you hand the mic to you in this when you're talking about your kid leaves and ask, well, why do you save money? How would you frame that with the question of why do you go to church? Like you put that really well recently. You know what I'm talking about? And how it just
Yeah. So
crumbles.
just saying if same thing with the college roommate and your college roommate, you show up your freshman year and they say, why are you a Christian? Why do you go to church? I don't know. My parents just took me to church. So I don't really understand why they took me. I guess they wanted me to be Christians, but that's where they left it. And too often, right now, we're seeing college freshmen coming home after first semester or coming home for Thanksgiving and completely changing the way they left for college. So we want to teach our kids, and I think this was even brought up in one of the book studies, one of the first ones that we did there with Luke leading it, was about teaching the kids this, why we do the things we do as Christians. Why do we stand in our faith? Why do we why do we believe this way? And not just saying believe this way and go on with your life, but teaching them why we believe that way. Look up the Bible verses that say this is what this is what it says in the Bible. This is what God wants us to be doing, the way we should be acting. This is it. And again, not just saying go do it, because they'll crumble under that.
absolutely.
Did
Yes.
you have experiences with maybe your own kids, maybe looking back and reflecting? Did you ever have a chance to have any of these tough, critical conversations, maybe when your kids were younger?
Actually, I did. And it was funny
Good.
because I made a concerted effort that when my children were growing up, that I was going to tell them the why. We would have conversations because growing up, it was do as I say, not as I do. And we weren't allowed to
Right.
question. So I made like my sons and I, because I was divorced early I was divorced when they were still young. And we would sit at the table and we would talk about things. They would ask me questions. I remember my 7-year-old Dre asking me, Mom, how are babies made?
Mhm.
No way. Did you record
And I told him in an age appropriate way, I'm like, you're 7, so, but not, I said, don't go to school telling other people's children because they may not be ready for that. But you asked me and I want to be honest with you. And, we talk about things, we talked about a lot of things. And, his friends would be like, your mom, you told your mom about that? You talked to your mom about that? And yeah, but it was great because we really, like, we were so close. We were so
Yeah,
close. I mean, we'll start
that's
right.
great.
And I say were because Dre, like I told you, Luke is with Jesus, and I still have Lee, who is here right now with me. And we're just amazingly close, and I'm just blessed to have them. I'm thankful that Lee has come through this stage in his life.
Yeah.
He was in the hospital for 2 months,
Oh,
more
wow.
than 2 months actually, and thankfully he is doing
Oh,
amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Great. So that's so key though, that you would actually sit down and talk to them. That's kind of what we designed this to be around, is sitting at the dining room table. And sometimes that's the only time that parents get a chance to actually talk with their kids while they're paying attention to them, and maybe leave the phones away from the table, put the phones down and talk. But the lessons are designed to be just a few minutes. You can drag them out. You can really get deep and spend as much time as you want, but they're designed to just sit there at the dining room table as you're eating and just ask your kids a few questions. Follow up, and that's a key thing: asking questions, getting their feelings, finding out what they think about everything, and following up with it, and not just again telling them what to do and how to do it. That's part of it, but following up with a real discussion that not enough parents are having right now.
It's true.
So,
Yeah.
Theresa mentioned you had read the newsletter. So when anybody goes to the website, these16things.com, the first thing that pops up is just sign up for the newsletter.
Mhm.
So I'm going to what Brian kind of wrote about for this week. And Brian, correct me if I go off rails, but so there's no money in here. There's no money involved. Somebody signs up for a newsletter on a Monday and a Thursday. They get a newsletter, and it might have a link to a video. Maybe there's a book somewhere in Amazon that kind of goes with the flow, but their lessons, their ideas, like, look, sit down with your child and be very intentional. So in your story, your 7-year-old came and asked you about how her baby's made. I think that's a common thing, kids ask, but imagine your kid is 13 and they still haven't come to you.
Mm-hmm.
Probably got it from somebody else. So this week's lesson, talking about, controlling how we are not responsible for what gets sent to us. We're not. We have to react to things. Mm-hmm. And when we react with emotion, sometimes we get out of line. And the way that I was likening this, Brian and I had a long conversation about this earlier today. A lot of people will react to what happens to them in life and think that, well, I'm the victim. Mm-hmm. Again, it's all about the reaction. Well, I'm the victim here. I didn't do anything. There's no way I'm going to get that job. I'm not going to apply. I'm not going to. But stop. Don't be so quick to be offended. Don't be so quick to be the victim. Is there something you can do for the next time? Is there something you can do to react and to be prepared? In other words, things happen to you, but it doesn't mean we're just walking around and blaming everybody. Is there some ownership on ourselves about how we respond to life? And so I was reading what Brian wrote, and I'm thinking about my oldest. My oldest is 13, and her name's Eve. And sometimes she will be quick to blame and not take ownership. So since reading that newsletter, and this is kind of the purpose, right? Even I do this. When Brian writes it, I pay attention. I sat down with my 13-year-old and we had a conversation about, from this newsletter, hey, let's talk about owning the things that we do and how we respond with emotion and how these emotions affect everything else. Yeah. So that's what the website's for. That's what the newsletter does for you. We got some videos. There's a video that went with it, but I just want to give a plug. If anybody's looking for ideas, there's a good one this week that Brian wrote up. Brian, did I go off rails too far?
No, that's good. Each week's going to be a different lesson on a different topic. Again, some will be this on just how to discuss these with your kids, and then eventually there'll be one on, let's say, cooking or finances. The cooking, the goal is to have your kids cooking that meal by the end of the week. And depending on their age, you may have to help them a little bit, but Luke and I are, we're blessed that our wives both teach our kids how to cook. And our kids all the time will, both of them, and then when they get together, that's all they're doing, it seems like, cooking and cleaning, which is crazy that teenagers are doing that, but I can attest that they are cooking and cleaning when they are together a lot of the time. They're not scrolling through TikTok, hanging out. So yeah, I mean, each week's just going to be one of those lessons, anything from the discussion topics to skills like that, cooking and cleaning, to some sort of self-defense. Luke taught a lot of self-defense, I think karate or something like that. Luke,
he is joking. So I spent 20 years in the Army, and 11 of those I spent teaching jiu-jitsu and Army combatives, not karate, So kind of a sneak peek, Theresa. Next week it could be really divisive. And Brian and I debated this when we were recording some videos that are going to complement this. Standing against culture. Because when you standing against culture, you have to define what part of culture you're talking about. And we're like, we're talking like, once we put this video out there's no parsing words, there's no nuancing, it's there. We have a 50 taking the stance. And so one piece of modern day culture is the transgender movement and truth, and what is truth and where does truth come from? And really, oh, here's one of my kids that wants to pop in. No matter which side you stand, the concept is still the same. Instead of letting the TV tell you about this, instead of letting a teacher that you may or may not agree with tell you about this, why don't we?
Right.
Why don't we sit down and talk about this? We need to be empowered. So that's a sneak peek into next week's.
Okay, awesome. So why don't we talk a little bit about this week's for the people who don't know what this week's topic was? Self-ownership, owning your emotions.
Yeah,
And
Brian.
yeah, which a lot of people don't think that they can, because you made me do it. You got me mad. You did it. It was your fault. So
Right.
we often hand the power over to other people instead of owning those emotions.
We do. So I heard it's probably been a couple years since I heard this, but somebody was saying it's not what you do, what somebody else does that makes you mad. It's your reaction to it. And I mean, honestly, in the last couple of years, I've had a lot of changes in my life, from health to mindset and everything. And this is something that I used to get mad at drivers on the road. Somebody cuts me off, I used to get mad as well. Somebody does something wrong to me, steal something, even if it was something little, maybe out of my car or something like that, I'd get mad. And now a lot more lately, I try to relax and say, you know what, it's not a big deal. And really, in the long run, it's going to hurt me worse to get mad and get frustrated than it is just move on and forget whatever that incident was. So that's just it. It's owning the fact that you can control your emotions and you don't have to get mad at someone else. So just like you said, when somebody does something to you, you don't have to say they're making me mad or they made me mad. Nope, they didn't. They did something that can be really frustrating, but you don't have to get upset at it. You can decide to move on and live a happy life. I had another buddy who always told me, don't let them steal your peace. And at first I didn't know. I was like, what do you mean? And then it hit. I was like, oh, that's right. Why would I give them control? So let them win when they're making you mad. But you just sit back, relax, and you're still winning.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And, I heard recently that emotions, like you get upset, it only lasts for 90 seconds. The reason that
Mm-hmm.
we extend it is all the stories that we attach to it. Well, the last time they did this and this other person did that, and all the stories, which is what makes it, cause people to explode, because there's so many things that they bring into it. But if you just sit with that emotion for 90 seconds, acknowledge
Yeah.
it and let it go.
Yeah. And in this, we're not saying that, Luke and I are writing both of these. Sometimes we go back and forth. Sometimes we both will work on them. And so you'll get writing and videos from both of us eventually, but we're not saying that we're perfect by no means. In fact, in the newsletter, I describe an incident that just happened while I was trying to write this. So something that was hitting me. I wanted to, that later that day, I wanted to sit down and write that topic. And my kids, I mean, my 7 kids, I'm sure it wasn't everyone at that minute, but everything seemed to be coming up. To be honest, I had in-laws in town as well. So my house was full of people going crazy. And I was like, all I want to do is sit down and write this. And I start to get grumpy. And then had a kid fall asleep without a diaper on and wet the couch. He fell asleep on our the playroom couch. And then I'm getting frustrated with my other kids, like, guys, why didn't you just say something? Why could we could have put a diaper on him? And then for the next 5 minutes, I'm grumpy. And my wife, she goes, Brian, you have control over your emotions. And that's all she needed to say. I knew what she meant. Immediately, I calmed down. I was like, you're right. I finished. I got him in the shower, got him all cleaned up, got him in a diaper in the living room, sitting down, and I could just move on and sit down with a calm head instead of getting more and more frustrated, maybe yelling at a kid when it wasn't their fault. So, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, that is so key. So, excuse me. And we just have to be mindful of that, because then what would you be modeling for him, getting upset at him over something, that he
Exactly.
couldn't control either?
Yeah, I mean, we as parents, we get on our kids when they flip out. The kid steals a toy or a kid hits them, and our kids come in here screaming and crying, and we expect them to act calmly and say, "Guys, it wasn't a big deal," but
Right.
in their mind, it was a big deal,
Mhm.
and maybe on a scale of 1 to 10, in their mind, it was more than me getting frustrated with my kids, and we expect them to not lash out, to not do things like that, but yet we turn around and we do things like that. We do lash out. We do talk badly about our friends or our neighbors, somebody, but expect them to not do that. They're modeling us. They want to do what we're doing, but also we have to, again, going back to what we talked about earlier, we have to explain why we're doing what we do so they see both sides of it.
Absolutely. Did you want to add anything, Luke?
Yeah, so I'm just thinking about the newsletter and the whole purpose behind all of this is that what happened with in Brian's situation is we have an actual occurrence. We have an actual event. All the things he wrapped up over the course of a 30-minute period, maybe even 10, that creates a learning moment for the next day. And as parents, it's easy for us, oh, that's just a one off. That's just no big deal. We're really trying to give parents the confidence, like, hold on, this is, imagine Brian sat down with his 14 and I think Owen's 12, a 14, 12-year-old,
Mm-hmm.
and said, stop. Let me tell you all what I personally had to process. Because I am a work in project. Jesus is molding the clay.
Yep.
And that is a huge opportunity. And so when Brian put that in that newsletter, I'm thinking, this is so genuine and authentic that these are the newsletters I would sign up for in a heartbeat if I wasn't part of this. Yes, tell me things that you're going through so I can sit down with my kids. My kids don't have the time to make every mistake in the world. They have to be able to learn.
Right.
So Brian's story gives us a learning moment for families across the state, the country, whoever. So I like the story.
Yeah.
That my kids are never screaming and they're never grumpy. My kids are perfect.
I hear you. And kudos to you, Mr. Luke.
That's
We should
Tia
all
that
learn
does it.
from him.
Yeah,
Tia's wife handles that part of it.
Gotcha.
yeah. Wives are true angels. They're true
No.
angels.
And it's so important, that children do see our imperfection. There are people who, somebody said the other day, well, you say all this and your kids aren't perfect. I was like, it's exactly. They're not, and neither am I. And the reason I'm
Yeah.
doing this is to help you to impart what I've learned. Because I tell my son all the time, I was like, if I knew then what I know now, oh my gosh, I would be the most amazing mother. I mean, we still make mistakes, and that's okay because perfect parents, when we act like we're perfect, our children don't see our imperfection. What are they thinking? They'll be afraid to make mistakes, afraid to come to us with those mistakes,
Yeah.
and feel really horrible about themselves because they made a mistake, and they have to come to this perfect parent and talk about their mistakes. I mean, it's just unrealistic.
I feel like I just heard a sermon talking to me. Goodness, that would. So Teresa, since you work with so many of the little ones, what is your experience with parents' involvement with the kiddos? What have you seen in your lessons, in your experiences?
Oh gosh, parents beating themselves up all the time because they didn't do it right. And what I like to tell them is, first of all, you don't know what you don't know, and you've got to give yourself some grace, right? These are
Mm,
all opportunities for learning, opportunities for your child to see you problem solve. Because if we look at it as a challenge and something to be solved, then we can model how to solve this issue, right? With our child. So they can see, oh, you know what? This happened and this is how mommy handled it, or this is how daddy handled it. I may handle it a little differently, but at least now I have a model for it. I know, okay, I can try something in that vein to fix it. But yeah, parents are always beating themselves up about, not knowing and shouldn't, they could have known, they should have known. I was like, well, I didn't know. I had my first son at 18, you know, and I didn't know a whole lot, you
yeah,
know, got married
Yeah.
at 21, divorced at 22. Like it was just, and I was
Mhm.
trying to do it by myself. So I made a lot of mistakes. Like I said, I wish I knew then what I know now, but
Yeah.
I just have to use what I know to empower other people.
thank you. Yeah, Brian.
Yeah, they were all learning as we go. And my dad always said we mature as our kids mature as well. Somebody Luke and I were talking to this morning was talking about how he wasn't ready to have a kid. He seemed like a very mature person, and he had his head on pretty straight. But he just was saying, I'm not mature enough. I don't think I'm mature enough. But my dad always told me, we mature as our kids mature. We mature as parents, as our kids need us to develop those skills as parents. But that, as our kids get older, we get a little better at parenting, but we're always going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
I mean, when I'm 80 and my kid's 60, I'm probably going to be making some mistakes still. I'm probably going to say something that I shouldn't say, or do something that I shouldn't do to my kids. But that is just part of the process.
It is. I mean,
Brian, give me a hard body, and I tried to set it straight, but in jiu-jitsu, so if you picture people on the ground wrestling, but they're doing arm bars and choke holds, and so that's kind of what jiu-jitsu is when the fight goes to the ground. But when somebody decides I'm going to go do karate, they're doing stand up and they're learning stuff. In jiu-jitsu, every day you're grappling with somebody. It's always a competition, and at some point someone's going to tap out. They got them in a position and they're done. And the word losing is not part of that equation. So I'm trying to draw a picture here. You go through a scenario like Brian went through earlier with all the just absolute chaos while he's trying to stay focused on writing this lesson, and he's processing everything. And then Theresa, I'm listening to your story about how parents beat themselves up because I can't believe I made that mistake. And it's not about losing. So in jiu-jitsu, you won or you learned. There's winning and so if parents get that confidence, like, okay, yeah, you messed that one up. Of course you did, but you learned. You didn't lose. You just learned. And if you could actually, can you imagine a parent that feels like they lost an argument, they lost a fight. The kid did something and it all went haywire. And they said, look, sweetheart, I didn't lose, you didn't lose, but we both learned. That will be a significant emotional event for that young child to have that parent say, I didn't lose you. I didn't lose this fight. You didn't lose either, but we're both learning. I promise you, any parents listening to this, if you could get the confidence to use some of that language, they will remember that conversation when they're 35 years old. Or like Brian, they're going to remember. So, Brian's when he puts his best.
You cut out a little bit, actually. It didn't catch what you even said there.
I was just saying that these kids that
just the last sentence I missed there.
Oh, I was just saying that Brian's pretty old, so he still thinks about his lessons too.
Oh. Yeah, no, it's so important because I mean, my baby is 36, and last week, coming out, he was in the hospital last week, and I've done some things that I tell parents not to do. Allow your child to learn for themselves, allow them to make mistakes, allow them to do this and that. And he was in the hospital and I was doing everything for him. And then I expected him to do something that he didn't do. And I was just like, why didn't you do this? And I had to think to myself, I'm so sorry because I set that expectation because I've been doing everything for you.
Yeah.
Instead of allowing you to make mistakes and allowing you to figure it out, I've been doing it for you. So please forgive me. And I mean, I just had to step back and I was just like, okay, so from here on in, because I want you to get back to where you were so you can flourish and keep moving on and get, and doing things for yourself. But I was just like, I did too much. I'm sorry. Like I have, in some senses disabled him because I was doing so much for him and now I'm allowing him to think for himself and do for himself because he's in the hospital,
Yeah. Yeah, but it's great that you recognized it when you did. I come across people all the time that their kids are in their 20s and 30s and they do everything for their kids still. And then they complain when their kids don't do something.
Yep.
And it's like, well, you're, looking outside into their situation. We can see it. They clearly cannot see it. And some of these are people I'm not going to go say that to. I don't know them that well. But it's like, guys, you have to recognize that you are enabling your kids to be the way they are. And then you complain that they are the way they are. But you take some responsibility and you're the one that raised that kid. You're the one that taught them that they don't have to do those things, that you'll do it for them. but you turned that around, you recognized it. So kudos to you on that one, because a lot of parents don't recognize that.
Well,
Theresa, you might have given us content for a future newsletter.
okay, cool.
Yeah.
You know
Yeah.
what though? Brian wrote the newsletter about selling an idea. Brian,
Mm,
maybe you forgot about this, but it
Yeah, I
was
remember
about how. Yeah, it's about how to sell an idea. And I'm thinking, sell an idea. So this is not faith based. There's no Jesus Christ in this. This is just a hard life skill that we need to teach our kids to do. And
yeah.
so I had my oldest sell an idea. And so at the end of the night, she wanted to go to some vacation Bible school that was going to be like $280, kind of expensive, right? And so she had to get up in front of me, my wife, and the other 7 kids and sell the idea. So this is what Brian's talking about, what you're talking about, Theresa. She was nervous. She kept fidgeting. Her eyes were red. I promise she was about to start crying. And I had a moment, kind of like a Theresa you just had. It's like, I just want to go rescue my kid.
Yes. Yep.
I don't want my kid in tears, but I forced myself to sit still, let her push through the moment, and she did fabulous. But oh my goodness, I wanted to rescue her and just save her from. So.
Mhm.
And then you would have prevented her from having that moment of accomplishment. It's like, I did it. Oh my gosh. We take that away from children. We rob them of that feeling. And yeah, I get it.
But it's tough though, because
Yeah.
we want safe and secure. Of course we do.
We do. We definitely do.
Isn't the opposite that we don't want them to be safe? So of course, yeah, we want them to be safe, but gosh.
But really, what is safety, right? So it wasn't like, like they say the saber-toothed tiger was after her, or she was, in a moment where she was being physically harmed. She was safe. She was just doing something that was out of her comfort zone. And our growth is out of our comfort zone, right? We can't grow inside
Sure.
of that zone. So you're allowing her to do it in a safe, loving environment.
Yeah, that's true. With that, I had a couple of my kids did it as well,
That's
and
right. Yeah.
on
So
on top
yes,
of
yes.
sorry, there's some cutting in and out there. Were you saying something there, Luke?
No,
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 okay.
go.
Something was cutting in and out there. So, but with on top of putting the kids in that situation and making them do it, I mean, I had my once I only had my 2 oldest do it, and they gave presentations. Doesn't matter on what they gave them on. But then my next couple kids wanted to go up there, and they wanted to give a presentation. So of course they're little, at the time, what, 6 and 9. And the 9-year-old got it there. He spoke a little bit, but then the 6-year-old, she's really shy. Half the time she won't even talk to Luke, and we've known each other for years. So she got up there and started to speak a little bit, but wasn't really going, not loud enough for everybody to hear her. But it still got her up there and at least attempting to get up, even though it was only in front of the family. She at least got up there, started to talk, and started to learn those skills of communication and just getting out of her comfort zone. So yeah.
That is beautiful. Absolutely awesome. So guys, just be mindful of your time. And again, we're going to keep doing this, right? Okay, awesome. So what is one thing you would want parents to leave this moment with?
Luke, you want to handle that, or you want me to? Go for it.
Oh, I would like parents, anyone that's there's one person or 51,000 people, to know that you can do this. You absolutely can. The story Brian's talking about, having a 6-year-old in a living room in front of a whole family, 7 kids, him and his wife, having her little 6-year-old Nora in front of 8 other people.
Yeah.
Is a daunting experience for a 6-year-old. But what that 6-year-old learns in a safe environment, like Theresa, you mentioned, is incredible. And so knowing that you can be confident to do these things, it can be earth shattering when it comes to parenting. And so what we'd like to provide are just ideas. That's all. We're just trying to provide weekly ideas, weekly lessons. And I read what Brian writes and I do them, and we even
Same with us. Yeah.
Yeah. And so can you imagine a world where you get this on a Monday and here's this kind of lengthy 7 to 9 paragraphs, you get this lengthy idea and this thought. It's like, wait a minute, I feel like I got it. Oh, I need to teach my children how to do this. in a safe environment. And then on Thursday, we're going to give you a couple practical applications on the chance that you haven't thought of them. So look, take the next few days, measure this with your kid. These are some practical ways to actually do the thing that we talked about. So if I'd leave anybody with something, Theresa, it's that you absolutely can. We know that you want to. We're just trying to give you ideas.
Oh my goodness, so powerful. And again, I really enjoyed reading the newsletter and look forward to future newsletters. So
Thank you.
Awesome. We're looking forward to putting them out there. We love it. And again, we both do these with our own kids, and we learn as we go as well. We're not the so-called experts in everything we do. We are learning and going right along with the lessons as well.
That's
yeah,
right.
and that's important, because you got to practice what we preach, right?
Right.
Yeah, we do. That's right.
Yes.
Awesome. So parents, you've been given a whole lot of tips so you can parent with confidence.